Hey everyone, and welcome to Voices of Veritas, a podcast made by the church for the church. I'm Ryan Hennigan.
And I'm Michael Bashaw. At Veritas Community Church, we believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is at work in and through us, transforming all things.
On Voices of Veritas, you will hear real stories of gospel transformation, spiritual insights, and heartfelt conversations that seek to encourage us as we follow Jesus.
We invite you to join us twice a month to listen, learn, and grow in faith together. Welcome to the Voices of Veritas podcast, everyone. I am your host, Michael Bashaw, and I am joined with my co-host today, Ryan Hennigan. Ryan, what's up?
You know what, Michael? It was a little tough getting here today with the traffic, but I'm glad we're here. Really excited about today's topic and the guests we have with us.
Yes, we're all just a little extra sweaty from sitting in 100-degree traffic for an hour today. So, cool. Well, today's topic is the rhythm of mission. And to discuss this topic, we have some guests with us. We actually have 3 guests today. So why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, how long you've been at Veritas, what's your role in the church. Dan, let's start with you.
Yeah, my name's Dan Kingsley. So I'm from the west side of Columbus, Hilltop. I've been attending Veritas for 2.5 years now. As far as role goes, so recently applied for deaconship. So it's still in that kind of process. But just, I'm grateful to be here, be talking about this today.
Dan, I'm curious, what's the deaconship process kind of look like? I mean, like if you had an elevator pitch for it, what's that look like?
An elevator pitch, yeah, that's fun. So the way that I see that process is like, it's not really changing anything I've already been doing, right? So this role is about serving like not only the members in the church, but the people that we have the opportunity to serve outside the church as well.
Rebekah, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been at Veritas.
So I'm Rebekah Mast Kingsley. I'm Dan's wife, just in case nobody got that connection with the last names. And I've been at Veritas for almost 3 years now. It'll be 3 years in September. I moved to Columbus from California 3 years ago. And so big shift moving from California to the Midwest. And when I was looking for a home church, I actually had connected with Pastor Phil's wife, Gina, who was my realtor, who helped me find my house here when I was moving, and then ended up at Veritas, and it was really a great fit for me with what I was looking for. And one of the things, like just kind of a little bit of a side, but I had been involved in a ministry that had a community garden in California. And when I first pulled into the Veritas West parking lot, there was this empty community garden space. And I was like, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. And anyway, sure enough, 3 years later, it's really good to be here.
That's really cool, Providence. I like that.
Dan and I met at Veritas, actually working in the community garden together. That's when I first remember meeting Dan. He might have different memories about it, but.
Yeah, so I definitely remember meeting Rebekah sooner. But like our initial conversations, like some of our deeper conversations started while we were both serving in the community garden.
Rebekah, what originally brought you from California to Ohio?
Yeah, so I work for Select Sires, which is an international dairy and beef cattle genetics company, and they're based out in Plain City, Ohio. So I moved from California for that. I worked for the international side of the company for 10 years before I moved.
Phil, how about you?
Yeah, my name is Phil Shimer, lead pastor at the West Congregation. I started there in 2019 as the pastor, but my wife Gina and I, our 4 boys, have been attending we're at the West Congregation since about 2015, 16, in that range. But came on as pastor in 2019, right before COVID. It was a great time to start being a pastor. But it's been just a joy to be serving there and meeting folks like Dan and Rebekah. Like you said, they are servants of our church, and it's exciting to see them kind of step into that process. And but we're excited to be here and talking about missions this evening.
Phil, you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording here, and you and your wife Gina, you guys basically grew up together, right?
Yeah.
Met, what did you say, second grade?
Yeah, so this isn't going to be our love story podcast. Maybe that could come in another time. But we met at a church on the west side, actually. Both of our parents went to the same church, and that's where we met in about the second grade. Started being interested in each other in middle school, high school, and became a couple, and never looked back. So we got married in college, actually. Our senior year at Cedarville, and moved back here to Columbus and the west side and started our family. So.
Well, thank you guys for being with us today. Like Phil said, really excited to talk about the rhythm of missions. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our topic. Michael, you want to go ahead and kick us off with maybe a discussion question?
Sure thing. I'm just going to lob this out there. Whoever wants to jump in first, go for it. When we use the word mission in a church context, people usually think of missionaries or spreading the gospel. So what do we mean by the term mission, and why do we call it a rhythm?
So growing up in the church, not Veritas, but growing up in the church, capital C, the word mission definitely connected with missionaries. I first kind of connected with it. My great aunt was a missionary in Africa, and she was a nurse. And so for my family growing up, we always had friends who were missionaries. My parents were very supportive of international missions, and I had a lot of exposure to that. And over time, I think for me, that definition has expanded not just to people who are going internationally, but for everyone who is a follower of Jesus is called to be on mission and to live on purpose. And so thinking about it from that standpoint, it's not minimizing outreach internationally, but it's saying this is a both and of whatever we do to reach the nations internationally and what we do like right here at home and how we connect. And so living on purpose, living out Matthew 28 of making disciples and showing up every day, like consistently in our walks. So it's not something that it's like relegated just to people who are going overseas. It's for all of us.
What I think is great about what Rebekah's talking about is that if you know her, but you don't, so I'll let you know it's a secret about her. Not a secret. If you go to her house, their house, there's a map that has all the places in the world that she's been. With her job, she travels more than anybody that I've ever met. And she's been to probably more countries than anybody I've ever met. And there's just little dots everywhere. And yet, right, she's gone overseas so many times. But like what I have noticed about her and Dan now is that mission to go overseas and build relationships and do the work that God has called you to do is just as important here and significant here on stateside that it is at all of those places that you have the experience of going to. And it's just pretty cool to see somebody who kind of lives in both worlds in a lot of ways, globally and locally, with that mindset of I'm joining God in the redemption and renewal that He's doing in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of piggyback off what Rebekah was talking about and the showing up consistently, I think like that's where we can find our rhythm, is that every day consistently showing up. And what I mean by showing up is like, am I living out what I am talking about? And like the opportunities here, like just in the West Side that I can think of, like there is a huge Somali population right in the West Side. And like we don't have to be traveling internationally to reach international people. Right. So like we can follow where we are. And that's right here at home. And that's following Jesus to the best of our ability and being like they're different. They're like, and being very inviting. And I truly believe that's how we can reach the people here.
If I remember correctly, Columbus has one of the biggest Somali populations in the country.
Second largest.
Second largest.
Minneapolis is the only bigger one.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's what I think living in Columbus as a whole is just so neat, because there's so much diversity. And you would see that in many large cities throughout America. But moving here from California, I was kind of like, oh, well, sorry. But like the Midwest, I didn't realize how big Columbus was. And I came from a more rural area of California. So for me, moving to Columbus, it's so cool because I do get to connect with people from all over the world, all different walks of life.
When I was in college, I was a world missions major in SEO. So the goal for Gina and I when we graduated was to go globally to the mission field. And when I graduated, we graduated with a mountain of debt, as most college graduates do. And the global mission field was kind of like, okay, that's not possible with this amount of debt. And so we moved back to Columbus, started working off debt. And I remember being so frustrated with God that he would not allow me to serve him in the foreign mission field. And just really struggling with that, like, God, you've given me this ability and desire to go overseas. Why would you put me in Grove City, Ohio at a factory? And I distinctly remember one day he, as I was just kind of lamenting and being frustrated with him, I remember him speaking to me and saying, look around. And I took a walk around the factory that day. And at that time, I would say 90% were either Laotian, Cambodian, and so he was like, here is a global mission field. If you're not going to reach these folks right here in your backyard, what would make you think that? I'm going to send you overseas. And that changed everything. It really kind of got to what Rebekah was talking about, where it's like, it's not just global mission field. It's right here. It's our factories. It's our cafes. It's our neighborhoods. And we are just called to join him in that redemptive work that he's doing right here, wherever here is.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting, because that's part of our story that I didn't know was similar. And I had, before coming to work for Select Siders, between companies, I had applied with a missions organization and was considering going to Tanzania to be full-time ministry, working in missions. And it would have been more of kind of an outreach and teaching English sort of thing. And I just remember being there and thinking, okay, this is really neat and I'm really enjoying it. But kind of like Phil said, if you're not doing those things in your backyard, would you do them internationally? But also feeling this conviction from God of, I have allowed you to be raised in agriculture. I've given you these different opportunities to be able to go into places where a missionary in a formal sense couldn't go. I'm not asking you to throw all of that away. I'm asking you to use that in a different capacity. And so I came home and I felt like, okay, that door is closed for me. And there were things around just elements of, I was financially supporting some missionaries, and then that awareness of, if I then needed support, I wouldn't be supporting other missionaries. So all of those things were going on in my head, and I'm thinking, okay, so Lord, what's next? And it was actually traveling home from that trip to do like a vision trip on whether or not I was going to go into the field as a missionary, that I got the phone call from the company I work for currently, where I started traveling internationally to all kinds of places that would be closed to a missionary. And so just seeing how God calls each of us and equips us through our lives to connect with specific people that others maybe wouldn't connect with.
So what do we mean? I mean, I know we just asked this, but like, I guess I want to hit this a little harder. Like, when we say like living out a mission or going on mission or in the mission field, like why does mission matter and what does it mean to like actually be a missionary? What are we aiming at there? Does that make sense?
I see it as first giving people the opportunity to see that they are created in the image of God and that they have value and that they are loved by the Creator God, and that relationship's broken for any number of reasons, but restoring that broken relationship. And so when I think about being on mission, it's helping other people to see their worth as being an image bearer of God and needing the restored relationship that only comes through belief in Jesus. But if we don't like have that good news for people, and if we aren't connecting with people and sharing that through the way that we live day in and day out, as Dan was saying, or right where in our backyard, we miss it. And so, but it's sharing and living out the knowledge that we ourselves are image bearers of Christ who are redeemed by him into relationship with God, and then like having so much passion for that we want others to live in that same truth.
Yeah, so I really like that, Becky. I also think something for me personally that was very important when I first became a follower of Jesus, it was that somebody met me where I was, and it wasn't like this forceful thing. It was like a very organic journey to knowing who Christ was. And I think when we are on mission and we're seeking people out, that's something to be very like aware of. And that's something I've tried to do and keep very, very much on the forefront of my mind is, okay, how do I meet this person where they're at and not be this hypocrite, quote.
Yeah, this matters because it's God's heart. All through Scripture, from Genesis to Revelation, God is pursuing people. He's rescuing people. And then he's sending them to continue that mission, to continue that message of love and redemption for the world. And so we see that all over Scripture, that he saves and he sends and he sends again. Even when in creation, he created this world for us to exist in, to bring glory, to experience his shalom and peace. But we brought brokenness into the world. And so he's been in this story of redeeming that. And he sends people out not to cause more brokenness, but to bless. And is what he tells Abraham, like, go and bless the world, And that's what we're called to. And so it's his heart to see that brokenness become blessing all over the world. And it's just cool that we get to be a part of it, and I mean, to see stories of transformation all the time. Yeah, it's his heart. That's why it matters, I think.
Yeah, I'm hearing in that like it's easy to think of mission as a goal, but that it's an action as a rhythm. It's a way of showing up that is pointed towards a goal, but is in itself like we all are on mission every day when we show up. Yeah. I think that's really beautiful.
And I think perhaps for people who are raised in a church, there can be some baggage around the word missions or missionaries because there was emphasis on like the end goal. And, well, how many converts did you have? And kind of a numbers sort of thing. And I think that this is an opportunity, and we have the opportunity to redeem that. God is sending us. He has sent us. That's always been true. But sometimes, perhaps in a well-intentioned desire for numbers in the past, there was a missing of the importance of discipleship and relationship. And so I think just, maybe I had to come kind of full circle on that it's not about the end goal. God does the work of drawing people to himself, and I can be part of that process, but it's not about what am I doing other than being faithful in obedience to him to share what he's doing in my life. And so if I didn't have a specific gospel conversation with this person, that doesn't mean God wasn't in it. God's in it through the day in, day out faithfulness that we're doing and building relationship. And we look at Jesus's life and the way that he modeled it, because he was the ultimate and the first person living truly fully on mission, and he did it all through relationship and speaking truth in relationship and engaging with people in relationship. And so I think it's just an important thing to remember, if there's people who are listening who grew up with the concept of door-to-door evangelism or 4 spiritual laws and kind of this like really hard, sometimes feeling maybe judgmental idea of mission versus drawing people into relationship with God through the truth of Jesus.
I think you hit on something really important. And the 2 words you kept saying were relationship and discipleship. And kind of like what Michael said, like, yes, there is a goal, quote unquote, to mission, right, of sharing the gospel. But as all of you have been kind of talking about, like showing up, meeting people where they're at, the mission fields, and like maybe it's just your day job or, whatever it is, like those are the aspects of discipleship and relationship with the goal of sharing the gospel, obviously. But this leads to the next question. I really was curious to ask you guys, because you hit on, Rebekah, like the emphasis on converts or numbers of people, part of some corporate mission. One of the questions is, how do you gauge success? And if you're out, living, whether you're a formal missionary or whether you're, working in a factory or whatever you're doing, and God has given you, quote unquote mission field, people around you to show up for and relate to and help show their value, help them realize the value that they have. How do you gauge success of like, yes, we are living on mission? Check.
We have a culture that is obsessed with metrics. It's like measuring success by numbers and visible success and celebrity and all of these things. But I think we need to remember, the kingdom of God success is not kind of determined by numbers or measured by numbers or influence. It's measured by faithfulness. And I think, you kind of hit on that a little bit, but, the 3 of us love backyard gardening. Like, it's one of our passions, and, they do the community garden, but they also have a beautiful backyard garden at their own place. It's the same thing when we're gardening. How do we measure that success? I don't make that little green sphere turn into a yellow, then orange, and red, right? God gives that. But there are things that I have to do that help kind of get that process become fruit. There are things that be faithful to, or that fruit is going to die. And so it's the same thing when we're living on mission. I was thinking of Micah 6 when he says, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, right? To love kindness and walk humbly with your God. This verse, it really highlights that it's not about performance or the platform that we have. It's really about walking humbly, living, loving sacrificially. And if we're doing that, whether the results are visible or not, I think we can be assured we are living on mission.
So, Phil, how, when we're talking about mission, how is that practiced, like, corporately at Veritas West?
Yeah.
How should it be practiced? How is it? What is there distance between what we're aiming for and where we're at these days in the church? And how does it feel over there? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think we're definitely called to as individuals, but also I love that question, focusing corporately. It's a rhythm of our church because it's something we do together. When I see folks like Dan and Rebekah and the other folks in the garden, blessing the community by being there and bringing their presence, when there's a group doing something, it's more visible and it has more impact, and it's there's more unity. Christ says, they'll know you're my disciples by the way you love one another. Part of that is showing up together and caring for one another. And so there's definitely a corporate piece of this, and it's planting churches, it's sending missionaries, all of these things, but it's also, I think, as a one of the things I like to say at West is we want our church to be a place where neighbors become family. And the way that you do that, right, is you are a community of people that really pursue and be about hospitality, right? Welcome, right? Are your spaces and your the places that you gather together, are they a place where your coworker, somebody at the coffee shop, they could feel welcome there? Is it too intimidating to be there? And then also serving. And so creating cultural values that invite people in the church to be a community that blesses the world around them, I think is really like a corporate way of doing that. It's all of those things of sending missionaries for sure and planting churches. We want to be a church that does those things well, but I think it's also just living life together with the awareness that what we do, how we interact with one another, and how we love one another and serve each other and serve the community together really is what God is doing in the world around us.
Phil, one of the things you talked about was mission taking sacrifice. Especially growing up in the church, you see people talk about this all the time, right? It's an imperative, like Matthew 28, Christ talking about going and making disciples. But I feel like it can be easy to burn yourself out. What would be some advice or maybe some practical ways that you guys incorporate in your own lives to avoid burnout and keep the rhythm of mission, quote unquote, healthy?
So for me, the biggest thing that I've learned is to set boundaries. And when I say boundaries, I mean work, personal life, engagement in the community. I want to balance all three things well. In the past, I've will pour everything into one thing and quickly get burned out. So just finding that appropriate balance and just living in that has been very important for me.
What I would encourage people to do, and this is where I find that balance, is starting off my mornings with, okay, Lord, what is it that you have for me today? Where would you have me show up? Who are the people that I need to connect with? And help me to see them, because whether they're at work or I bump into them in the line at the grocery store, it's about intentionality and how can I be intentional in that? And I find that that's what helps me to stay on track and then not burn out, because I still want to be aware and looking for opportunities to connect, but then the burden's not on me. It's saying, okay, Lord, how do I align with you to make those connections? Because if I'm trying to add more hours to the day, I burn out.
Yeah, it's more directionally focused. I like how you said that.
I would like to add the importance of being discipled as well. So you can disciple, but it's also equally important to be discipled. And for me personally, that looks like once a week, every week, I meet with somebody for a solid hour. Right. And that's me getting poured into. The saying is, you can't pour out what you don't have.
Yeah.
So keeping that rhythm every single week and has been extremely helpful for me.
I think there is a reality in our culture where we should look at our calendars and say, hey, maybe there is too much on here. But I think burnout really happens when we take on the role of God in the redemptive process and thinking, carrying the weight of, saving the world. And so I think to counter that, Jesus has this great line where he's invites us to abide with him. We just went through John, abide with me. I am the vine, you are the branch, right? apart from me, you can do nothing. So if we want to do something, if we want to join him in his mission, we better be sure we're connected to the vine. And so what does that look like? What is that? It may be adding something to your calendar, like discipling somebody once a week, but it also might be taking something away and pausing. Sabbath. I think if we all practice Sabbath a little bit more intentionally, we would be more refreshed and renewed to then, like you just said, we can't pour out. What's the quote?
We can't pour out what we don't have.
What we don't have. And so that's the way that we get what we need to continue that mission. It's not about just retreating into silence and solitude. It's about being poured into so we can overflow with God's love and in his mission. So, yeah.
I really like that imagery of the cup. Like, obviously that's in scripture where Paul talks about being overflowed with joy or love overflowing, right? But it is God who's pouring that into us, and then it's the overflow that goes to other people. Some of the things that have practically helped me, it's usually not avoiding. I'll say that I usually don't avoid burnout. It's usually I get there and then I recognize it. And so when that happens, things that have helped me are taking time to just be in the Word. Because that kind of helps me recenter of okay, it's not me. It's not my power. Why am I even doing this? Is it reputation? Is it to make myself feel better? Or is it the gospel and reminding myself of the gospel? So that's been good. Sabbath has been a really important one for me lately. Ever since our church at the Short North anyway, I think was it 3 or 4 months ago, we went through the Practicing the Way through John Mark Comer, where he goes over some of the spiritual disciplines. And ever since then, the Sabbath spiritual discipline has been something that I've really, really come to appreciate. And I've been trying to figure out little things that might go along with that. Obviously on Sunday we go to church, but what are the things that I'm either going to add to that or take away? And I feel like how you said that, where it's it's not always because you're too busy and you just need to take something away, but maybe it's adding something. So for me on the Sabbath, meal is really important. I love food, if you couldn't tell, but I really think that that's something that I've tried to add to the Sabbath. It's not only do I go to church, but I'm going to not adhere to my diet on Sundays because it's a way for me to take a mental rest from how many calories am I eating or what am I, all this stuff. But then on Monday, you're back at it. So it's a caveat. But things like that. I mean, Sabbath, scripture reading, I really do think some of those spiritual disciplines have helped me along the way after I've noticed the burnout. I really got to get better at noticing that it's coming and avoiding it or, handling it right there instead of letting it explode in certain ways, right? Because you become less patient, more irritable, or, some of the relationships that are really important to you, they'll fall through the cracks or something like that. And it's when that happens, so you notice it after the fact.
Yes, I'm right there with you. I definitely notice it once I'm way past the threshold of being entirely burned out. And that's when I think about, how should I avoid this in the future? So I'm right there with you.
I'm reminded often of my dad always used to say when we were younger, he would say, if Satan can't get you bad, he'll get you busy. Mm-hmm. And that we can be committing to really good things, but is it the thing that God would have us stepping into? Is this my ball to pick up and carry right now? Or is me trying to carry all of them preventing someone else from having the opportunity? And I have to ask myself those questions sometimes. And it's helpful having other people who are discipling you or mentoring you or partnering with you in life who are reminding you of saying, is this yours to carry right now? And it's maybe not don't carry that forever, but maybe in this season, it's not.
Well, that's an important point that, I think we've all been kind of dancing around, though. It's mission is not done on your own, and one of the questions I wanted to get to was how does, here at Veritas, we have 5 rhythms, right? Mission, service, learning, community, and
Service. Worship.
Thank you.
I was gonna say we always forget at least one. It's a short north thing over here. So,
But so one of the questions was, how does the rhythm of mission relate to the other four that Veritas has? And we've all been kind of saying that, right? Like when we talk about learning, for example, it's like discipleship would be definitely a way to fill your cup up for mission, which would fall like under learning, or like, having somebody alongside you with mission is like the community, and do you guys have like other like concrete examples of how the rhythm of mission might fit with the other rhythms?
If you were to go to our missionaries, the Williams in the UK, right, or the Workmans in the Czech Republic, and you said, what part of your ministry is your mission rhythm? They would probably look at you funny, because it's like, all of it. Everything we do is mission. And so, you can't live on mission disconnected from and apart, and have a part of your life, worship and learning and community and service. And so I think I got off there. They're all connected. I think particularly with mission, you can see that a little bit clearer in that, worship fuels mission, right? What we are passionate about, like you've heard about our garden, because we're passionate. We're not worshiping it, but we're passionate about it. So you're going to hear about it, right? And the same thing with Christ is, if we worship Him, right, the world is that's going to overflow from our lives, and that's going to fuel why we do what we do. Learning equips our mission. Like, how do we know what to do, right? How do we know where to go? How do we know what we're doing, what we're saying? We spend time in His Word and learning and being taught by one another. Like, the mission I have, the calling I have, was taught to me by people in my church growing up, and now being taught here at Veritas as well. And so, we already touched on it, but community displays the mission, displays the gospel to the world around us. And so, the more effective, the more healthy our relationship and our community is, the more kind of family feel it is, then people will take notice of that. That's very countercultural. Most people in our society feel lonely, feel isolated, and all by themselves. And so, and then service just embodies our mission. Jesus came into our world, and what did He do? He served over and over. He demonstrated what the mission looks like in flesh and blood, right? Wrapping Himself in a towel and washing people's feet. And so they're all part of it. It's just beautiful to see, that they're not siloed. It's all working together in this beautiful display of God's love, His grace.
It's a really cool picture. And if there's not a flow chart of this, I think there should be, because I can visualize exactly how you're describing the way that these rhythms relate to one another. And it's like, I get chills. It's a very exciting picture of a Christian life.
So I actually kind of want to take our discussion and kind of hyper focus, if we can, on like the actual act of sharing the gospel part of mission.
Okay.
So first question I would say is, in the culture that we inhabit today, like we've said earlier that, Columbus is has the second largest Somali population, in the United States, and it's very multicultural. And, coming from California, Rebekah, you didn't realize how big it was going to be. So especially in a culture like this, where there's just a plurality of views, what advice would you give to somebody who is actively trying to share the gospel with somebody around them?
When you're talking about sharing the gospel, I would hope, if you're a follower of Jesus, you know the basic message of the gospel, and so that God created us as image bearers, that He has a purpose for your life, that He loves you, right? But that we sin, like, we've broken that, and then Jesus comes to redeem that by going to the cross for us, and so we can kind of work through the message a little bit, but it may be even more helpful right now. Just say, like, how we are presenting that, and what we're bringing to those conversations and those relationships, our presence. I'm not saying it's more significant than the message, but maybe missed a little bit more than what the actual content of what we're saying. And so just that need for presence, right? Listening, right? Loving people, bringing honesty, humility, and grace into those conversations. And so first I would just say, listen first, right? Love well, respond with boldness and grace, and truth and grace, and love and grace. Just let your words be just saturated with grace in those conversations. But first, listen to what is really, you can pick up on where people are at, what they're struggling with pretty easily. So.
One of the things that I learned during a discipleship program that I participated in when I was still in California, it was a program called The Journey. And we focused, a whole session was on listening and on the reality that as believers, when we show up somewhere, the Holy Spirit is with us. And for us, that can feel normal because he's with us. But for someone else who doesn't have that experience, it's a really different sense if we are living in step with the Holy Spirit. And one of the things that to me continues to be very humbling is the work that I do. Sometimes I've had the opportunity to go to closed countries that missionaries wouldn't be able to go to. And just in living and being there, I get to answer questions sometimes. And so one of the gals, when I was there one time, she said to me, she's like, "You're an American, so I think that means you're a Christian, right?" And there's this assumption that, well, Americans are Christians. Well, that doesn't necessarily give the image that we as followers of Jesus want to portray. But she qualified that and she said, "But I don't think that you're a fake one. You're a real one. There's something different about you." And then she also mentioned another one of my coworkers who is also a Christian. And she said, "I think Americans might say it, but I think you guys are different." And I was so humbled because there wasn't a chance during my time in that country, that week that I was with her, for me to openly be saying, "Do you know that God has a plan for you and you're created in his image and that you're a sinner and need Jesus to restore that relationship?" There hadn't been that conversation, but she still picked up on something being different.
I was going to add that because there was a moment when I, in my old company before I took on this role as pastor, I just was so mean to this lady at work. She had done something I didn't like, and I just went off on her one morning. She left the building, cried in her car, and it was just, I shared this in preaching before, it is in the sermon illustration, so I'm not going to get into the details, but I was hurtful, and what it doesn't mean is that we were perfect, is what I'm getting at. And so when she came back and I had a chance to apologize and kind of work through some reconciliation with her, that just doesn't happen normally in the workplace, and so I think it can add the way that we even present our weaknesses and our struggle can really, and maybe more so than our successes and our competencies, display the love of Jesus to our coworkers. Ironically, when I took on this role as pastor, I asked her, I said, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Do you think this is something that I should consider?" And so this was like maybe a couple of years after the incident. And she said, "I always knew that this is something that you would be called to." And it just shows you like the redemptiveness of what God's able to do, even when you hurt people, even when you bring brokenness to a situation, he's able to bring something beautiful and good out of it. And we still chat to this day. It's pretty cool. But
me and Rebekah have this diagram. It's a triangle, right? And it's about our marriage. So God's here, me on the left, her on the right. The closer I am to God, the closer we are together, right? And vice versa. So when I'm walking in step with the Holy Spirit, right, and I'm close to God, like that is an invitation. I am being invited and inviting soul to people. And I think that's like in your scenario, Rebekah, that's what she's seeing. You are walking in step with the Holy Spirit. You are this inviting soul. Whether you see it or not, God's love is showing through you. And I think that's where we can find the assurance. Like, how can we reach people with the gospel? That's how we can reach them with the gospel, is by being in step with Him first.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Jesus modeled so much. And like, I have to remember that sometimes. Like, He went away to be with the Father. And there were so many exciting things that the gospel writers could have included that He was doing with healing people and all of that. And yet they included multiple times where Jesus went away. He disappeared to be with the Father, or He, spent time in prayer. If Jesus went away to be with the Father, to have His cup filled, and staying in step with the Father like that was so critical for Him, how much more is it for me?
If there are people in our church, me, whoever, who, either feels unequipped to be on mission in certain ways or lacking purpose in that, what would you say to someone who feels unable to contribute to the mission of the gospel in the ways that we think we're supposed to as Christians?
I'd say welcome to the club. Honestly, like most days we're more fully aware of our limitations and our lack, our ability, what we are bringing to this whole thing. And so there's a healthy tension there where it's like that's a good feeling. Don't let that cause you fear, and don't stifle what He has called you, but be aware of your unique personality and how He's designed you and the experience He's given you to share the gospel and connect with people, and trust that He has given you what you need to fulfill what He's called you to do.
That made me think of the Ephesians 2:10 passage, and I had to quick look it up to make sure I had the right verse. But like, being created by God for good works, and that He prepared that in advance for us to do. And so He is equipping us, and He's making us all unique. Sometimes I look around at a group of people and I'm like, wow, God, you are super creative and your image is very diverse, because you look at a group of people and everybody's different. And in that, the people that, Michael, you're able to connect with are going to be very different than the people that I'm going to connect with, because of where God placed us, and living out His mission and being faithful to what He's given us. And what are the things that we desire that get us excited? And the things we've talked about, the community garden a lot, but Dan and I both enjoying that is what brought us together. We followed that desire to make things grow and to connect with the community. And through that, we met each other, and a couple years later, now we're married, And so, and I'm not saying this isn't a, like, do these things and you'll get all the things you wanted, or you're going to meet your spouse, and that's not the point here, but it's following the things that, like, God puts desires in our hearts. And so what are the current ministries that are available here at Veritas? Who are the missionaries that we're supporting? Doing a little bit of research on some of that, and saying with open hands, Lord, like, which of these connect with interests that I already have? Because that's quite possibly where He is drawing you and leading you, and where you can be more intentionally on mission.
Yeah, and trusting the works that He's prepared for you, again, brings the burden off of us.
Absolutely.
It gives us a whole new attitude to approach this with. So, yeah.
I feel like this is a topic that is just so nuanced. Obviously it's broad, as all the rhythms have been. I do have one last question that is completely unrelated.
Oh, no.
You made me think of it, Rebekah, when you were talking about going on some of these international trips and you didn't like the food. What would be one meal that if you could only eat one meal the rest of your life, it would be that meal?
I'm a pizza snob. Like,
Oh.
I will eat pizza every day of the week. And so there's such a diversity with pizza. It's a simple thing, but it's also like there's so much variety.
Do you have a favorite pizza place in Columbus?
Our family go-to is Flyers. Actually, it was my first job when I was in high school. And it's a good family that runs Flyers Pizza. They don't have one in Columbus. That's why I have to drive. I can't do delivery. That's my only problem. So put one in the Hilltop.
How about you, Dan, Rebecca? What, you guys have like a meal for the rest of your life?
Yeah, for sure. So mine would be tortellini soup with homemade sourdough bread to dip it in. Okay. And then like a fried, like roasted zucchini for a vegetable.
That's great. Do you make your own sourdough?
No. Rebecca does.
Oh, yeah.
Not on a regular basis.
But enough.
Yeah. Mine would be a Moroccan tagine.
Yeah, that's so good.
That
I'm gonna have to explain what this is.
yeah, so in Morocco they have it's like a cooking pot, but it kind of acts like a crock pot. You set it on a stove, and so it's got a base, and then you put in it all kinds of different things. Probably my favorite one is a chicken and lemon and olives, and it's just really like savory. And then you serve that with couscous.
For me, like I always think about this like death row. You're on death row, like what's your last meal? For me it would be like porterhouse steak with like a mushroom sauce on top, side of mashed potatoes and gravy. And for dessert, I would have to do a black raspberry cobbler. How are you, Michael?
Well, what I eat the most is I love a good chili, but it's got to be like a thick chili, like none of this watery, it's got to feel like a stew. And if you put sour cream on it, some hot sauce, cheese, and the sourdough bread to dip it in. Yeah, that's a good one.
Anyway, thanks guys. Appreciate your time. It's been really fun. And that'll do it for us today on the Voices of Veritas podcast.